With the pass-happy league the NFL has become, the wide receiver position is one of the most important positions in football. And when you think of good wide receivers, there's probably already a few names popping into your head, and pretty quickly you can rattle off 9 or 10 receivers that are all damn good football players and amongst the league's best. And there is certainly no shortage of talent at the receiver position in the NFL, and in today's video we're going to be ranking the top 10 wide receivers entering the 2023 NFL season. Naturally, there's going to be disagreements on rankings, so let me know what we agree on, what we do not agree on, and some players that you think should have made today's video. There's only 10 spots, and inevitably some guys are going to get snubbed, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with Garrett Wilson of the Jets. Wilson won the 2022 Offensive Rookie of the Year and put up over 1,100 yards last year in what were far from ideal circumstances. There were glimpses of Wilson in his rookie year where he proved he can be a legitimate number 1 wide receiver at the NFL level for a very long time. And for the quarterback situation he had last year, whether it was him or, spoiler, a player who will be in today's video and a guy like Davante Adams, how much could a player even like Davante, for example, have produced with Zach Wilson, Chris Streveler, Joe Flacco, and Mike White throwing him the football, much less in Garrett's rookie season? The Jets did Wilson, and the team for that matter, a huge service by bringing in the 4-time league MVP and Aaron Rodgers to quarterback the team, and I do think Wilson will go for over 1,300 yards this year, at minimum that is, and possibly have double-digit touchdowns. It's been a long time since the Jets have had a number 1 wide receiver, but Wilson certainly fits the bill. Staying in the AFC East for number 9, and it's Jaylen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins. With a better system and more consistency at quarterback than his rookie year, Jaylen quietly went for over 1,300 yards and finished 7th in the NFL in receiving in 2022. He had 6 100-yard games, and whether it's him or teammate Tyreek Hill, one thing teams always have to account for when playing Miami is speed. Jaylen averaged over 18 yards per catch last year and had an outstanding 171 yards and 2 touchdowns in what was a huge come-from-behind win over the Ravens in Week 2. The biggest thing for Jaylen's production in 2023, in terms of maximizing what he can do, will rely on Tua staying healthy, but from a talent standpoint, I think Jaylen is honestly a tad underrated, and that's due in some part to having Tyreek Hill on his team and having Marr Chase in his draft class, where people don't necessarily forget about Waddle, they just mention other players before him, but he comes in today's video at number 9. Next up is CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys, and CeeDee is a player who really took a big step in 2022. Over the first 2 years of CeeDee's career, he had a 900-yard season and an 1,100-yard season, and with the team trading Amari Cooper to the Browns last offseason, the receiver room undoubtedly became CeeDee's room to lead, and he became a second-team All-Pro and was named a Pro Bowler for the second time in his career. He had career highs in every category and had his first of what will hopefully be many 100 reception seasons in 2022, and with Dak Prescott only playing the season at 30 years old, it's not unreasonable to think CeeDee will be there for the next 5 or 6 years and eventually get all of the Cowboys' receiving records. There were times last year where CeeDee took over games, and I think he is still growing as a player and could force himself into the top 5 conversation by season's end. Assuming he stays healthy, of course, I would be very surprised if he doesn't have over 1,200 yards in 2023. Arthur Juan Brown, aka Swole Batman of the Eagles, is up, and what a year it was for AJ in his first season in the city of brotherly love. AJ had 3 150-plus yard games, all of which the Eagles won, of course, and had 5 total games with over 100 yards receiving. He started his career off in Tennessee with back-to-back 1,000-yard years, then missed some time in 2021 and was traded on draft night in 2022, and immediately signed a $100 million contract with the Eagles. And I'd say it's worked out very well for both sides so far. With the addition of Brown, the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl as AJ was on his way to a near 1,500-yard season, and we got to see him truly become a number one wide receiver and a player he thought he could become all along. He was a second-team All-Pro in 2022, and if he gets the same number of targets this year as he did last, I think we'll be looking at another All-Pro caliber season. AJ Brown is a problem for opposing teams to deal with because he can beat you in nearly every single way. This, to me at least, is where I truly struggle to rank the top 6 receivers, but ultimately for number 6, we went with Marr Chase at the Bengals. Marr has started his career with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and without him, it's not an exaggeration to say Cincinnati would not have made it as far as they did over the past few years. Chase is without a doubt one of the most talented players in the league, and I know some people are probably going to be upset with this ranking, and to that I would say it wouldn't surprise me at all if Marr wins the Offensive Player of the Year award this year. We know he'll get the volume, we know he has a good quarterback, and the big thing will be, can he play all 17 games this year like he did in his rookie season. There is no deficiency to Chase's game, and the same can pretty much be said for numbers 1 through 5 as well. Cincinnati wants to win a Super Bowl in the worst way, and if they do in 2023, it'll be because Marr steps up and has a career year. But for now, he comes in at number 6. There were probably some people wondering where Cooper Kupp would come in after his season came to an abrupt ending in 2022. And in the full 8 games Kupp played last year, minus the game against Arizona, in which he left early due to a high ankle sprain, Kupp had over 800 yards in those 8 games and also had 6 touchdowns, and was on pace for a 153 reception season, which would have broke the receptions record set in 2019 by Saints receiver Michael Thomas, and Kupp was also on pace for over 1,700 yards and 13 touchdowns. This would have been following a season in which Kupp finished 3rd in the MVP race, won the Offensive Player of the Year, and went for over 1,900 yards. And oh yeah, he won the Triple Crown in 2021. The Rams have a big 3 and everyone else on the roster led by Aaron Donald, Kupp, and Matt Stafford, and with how much Sean McVay utilizes Kupp in the Rams offense, whether it's as a receiver or even as a rusher, as McVay loves getting the football in Kupp's hands, if Cooper stays healthy this year and plays all 17 games, really by default because the Rams roster is extremely top-heavy, Kupp will receive an insane amount of volume, and it wouldn't surprise me even in the slightest if he has over 1,500 yards this year due to sheer volume alone. And for anyone thinking, well, Kupp is just a volume catcher, trust me, if he were that easy to stop, teams would have figured it out by now. And from one side of the country to the complete opposite, we go to Western New York to discuss Stefon Diggs of the Bills. A big reason why Stefon wanted out of Minnesota after the 2019 season was because he felt he wasn't getting the ball enough and thought his career was, in some ways, going to waste. And in his 3 years in Buffalo, he has racked up over 330 receptions for over 4,100 receiving yards and 29 receiving touchdowns. He has also notched 3 straight Pro Bowls and 2 All-Pros, with a first-team All-Pro in 2020 as he led the league in receptions and in receiving yards. If you look at Stefon's pre-draft numbers with his 3-cone and his short shuttle, both of which were below the 40th percentile for the receiver position, you may wonder how Diggs is so good despite not being the most physically imposing receiver or the fastest guy on the field, and where Stefon thrives is his route running and his hands. And Diggs' hands are ginormous for his size, as his hands rank in the 86th percentile, and when you have a pair of mitts like Diggs does, it certainly makes his job a lot easier. And of course, he is a terrific route runner and does a good job at creating separation too. He is the epitome of a number 1 receiver at the NFL level, and from a statistical standpoint, going to Buffalo has proved to be a very good thing for him. This is not talked about too often in the media, but Stefon is quietly working on 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons dating back to his time in Minnesota, and just being realistic, if he stays healthy of course, I'd be surprised if if it doesn't get to 8 or 9 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He's a very, very good player and comes in today's video at number 4. Next up is Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins, and what's comical about Tyreek, or the narrative around him, is that a year ago right now there were people who legitimately thought his career was going to waste in Miami, and that he sold his career away for a paycheck, and how could he survive without Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback? And Tyreek finished the 2022 season with career highs in receptions and receiving yards, finished 4th in the Offensive Player of the Year award race, and was a first-team All-Pro. Not bad for a guy who was quote-unquote throwing it all away. And watching the Dolphins offense in 2022 from afar was fun, as Mike McDaniel is a great offensive mind, and watching him get Tyreek and Jaylen open while the team won more games than they did in any of the previous few years was a good thing for both Tyreek and the Dolphins fan base. And in his first year with Miami, Tyreek had 7 100-yard games, which included 4 150-plus yard games, and in those 150-plus yard games, he had double-digit receptions in all of them. Hill is obviously known for his speed, and while that is a big part of his game, that's not the only reason he has been successful for so long at the NFL level. And for as long as he has been in the league, he is still just 29 years old, so there's still a lot of time for him to dominate and to accumulate numbers over the next few years. Tyreek has been named a Pro Bowler in every season of his career so far, and I do not see that changing in 2023. This is not used often, but he is a one-of-one player and a guy that can change the game on every single play. And we are down to the final 2 guys, and number 2 is Davante Adams of the Raiders. Davante has been on an insane run over the past few years, and I have no problem with people putting him as the number 1 receiver in the NFL. He is that good. And over the past 3 years, Davante has 3 100 reception seasons, 3 1,300-plus yard seasons with back-to-back years of over 1,500 yards, and this number almost sounds made up, but 43 receiving touchdowns. And that number over any 3-year span is insane, and the most Jerry Rice ever had in a 3-year span was 46 touchdowns, and that kind of gives you an idea of how great Davante has been over the past 3 years. And quickly for the games played crowd, yes, Davante played 3 more games in these years than Jerry did his, but the comparison shows how dominant Tay has been. He is a technician of a route runner and a guy young receivers should be asking any and every question to, because he has the answers. He hasn't lucked into 6 straight Pro Bowls and 3 first-team All-Pros over the past 6 years. I have no problem with people having him as the number 1 receiver, but for today, the number 1 guy I have is Vikings receiver Justin Jefferson. And over the first 3 years of Jefferson's career, he has the most receiving yards of any player, and not by a little. He is the only receiver in NFL history to have over 4,200 yards in the first 3 years of their career, and what's crazy about this is he has over 4,800 career receiving yards, meaning through 3 years there's a 700-yard gap between him and the number 2 player, and that's Randy Moss. Jefferson had 10 100-yard games in 2022, in which he went on to win the Offensive Player of the Year, and had 4 150-plus yard games. Justin was a legitimate MVP candidate in 2022, and without him on the Vikings roster, it's not an exaggeration to say this team, especially with that defense, may have only won 8 or 9 games last year. They needed Jefferson down the stretch time and time again, he delivered. And I think JJ is the number 1 receiver heading into the 2023 NFL season. And that's all I have for today, and I hope you enjoyed, and only about 29% of people watching are subscribed, so if you are enjoying, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second to do and helps tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.